I mean, formally speaking, I guess all I was looking to do tonight was certainly to make introductions. What I'm shooting for here is that we've come, certainly the last few months since the winter time, without having full quorums, having a couple of people move out of the area. We've had a few field sessions out on the town forest lately, which has kind of broken up our schedule. And then I'm kind of new to the chair of this committee as well. So procedurally speaking, we're kind of just all over the place at the moment, so I do apologize for all of that.
Yeah, I think,
and the idea was I would really like to, if we had more of a full quorum tonight, the one procedural thing that I'm shooting for, that maybe if you guys want to volunteer, that would be great, because we haven't had anyone stand up from within, because we are in dire need of a secretary. I don't know if that's feasible or not, but what we have happening, of course, is that Carl has gone from the chair to a member. I've jumped up when asked to become the chair, and our secretary moved out of town. And the other guys, outside of a couple that are the ones that we kind of are calling the laggers that may or may not be in here tonight, then there's one other that doesn't tend to come around. So basically, we've lost our secretary. We're trying to come by one. And I'm trying to bring this back, and this isn't anything, procedurally speaking, from where we have been previous to this downtime, so to speak. But I'm trying to come up to speed and get more procedurally sound than we've been over the last 4 months within my, or 5 months within my tenure, I guess is the way to put it. So I'm trying to study up, look back on where we've been. The last meeting that we had was not a formal meeting. We had taken a walk out on the town forest.
Just my minutes. I'm going to read the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Carl. Okay, well, if you've got, I didn't know what you had formally, so.
Well, I did write down some minutes.
Okay, well, go for it then.
Yeah. Yeah, as you know, Steve has done a forest management plan on the town farm lot, which, are you familiar with this lot at all? So the town owns 2 lots, actually 3 lots. It's a town farm lot, and then there's a lot on the Hebo-Hibo Road, and then there's a 25-acre piece at Goat Hill. And those are all responsibilities of this committee.
I only have 1 copy, but
okay. 120, is it, the Hebo-Hibo?
Oh, the Hebo-Hibo one, it's, yeah, somewhere about there.
Somewhere in that.
Okay. Town farm lot is 149, and then the Hebo-Hibo lot, which we had harvested previously back in the early 2000s.
Right.
Is on the old unmaintained Hebo-Hibo road down below the school.
Right away, didn't it?
Okay.
Well, actually, it borders up on the Acton town line.
That's right. Yep.
So, anyway, so those are the 3 lots we have. But the one we're focused on right now is the town farm lots. Steve has written a forest management plan for that. That was harvested when I first came on this committee, probably 30 years ago. So that's harvested.
I was told in the early 80s or 70s.
With no management plan, just, you know, a high-end type of cut. We didn't have a forester at that time. So anyway, we took a walk. Our last meeting was a walk with the committee and open to the public. And we did get, let's see, Linda Greco and Darren Maloney, George Main. These are folks from the public that came. There's a friend of Gavin's, I don't remember his name.
I don't know.
Yeah. So we had a few people show up, as well as most of the board members showed up for that, except for Mark Kerr. So anyway, we walked out. Steve kind of showed us around. There's different stands out there. What might be what would be the description for those stands and things like that. And now we're kind of back here. I think obviously with the members. See the plan, and we should work through that a little bit so that you kind of, and also gradually get to know these parcels a little bit. I mean, we'll try to incorporate that into some meetings or walks or whatever.
Right.
So
we don't have active management on these pieces yearly by any stretch of the imagination. Okay. Again, some of them we've tried to take some steps to try to bring them a little more into the public eye. you know, through different walks or, and again, but for example, the Hebo Hybo property is at least a mile back into the woods below the school. And it is on an old abandoned road, but you're not going to have necessarily just people wander around back there, although there are some pretty neat sites back there and some old foundations and different stand types of timber. And that lot actually comes very close within one lot of abutting the Lebanon Town Forest on the north side of Lebanon. So the issue with, anyway, please, I don't want to get off the minutes.
No, I was just wondering, that was,
Okay.
okay, that's what we did last
Okay.
meeting.
So, you know, with regard to the town forest properties, that one specifically was one that, upon coming into the town in '98, I looked at that one and said, geez, we got this piece down here, any thought on doing something with it? You know, I've done the full inventories on these pieces, brought it back to the selectmen. They had recommended doing some work out there. That Hebo Hybo Road has seen some progress or desire to be brought into some trail networks that link in with Sanford, so we see the Hebo Hybo as being potentially, you know, a throughway of some sort for some recreation. Now again, how much use that is, it definitely gets a lot of four-wheeler traffic, ATV traffic, and these sorts of things. And a lot of that is problematic because there is some damage out there on the town lot. And not just in erosion, but in littering and that sort of thing. So we do have the principal discussion of access versus damage is something that foresters see all the time and the town sees in this case as well. So while we have desires to make these parcels more public and more usable, we also have the concerns, of course, of use. The town farm property that plan was written for is also on a similar style road, in that it's an unmaintained road. Nowhere near as backwoods as the first lot, but again, it goes from essentially the bottom of Sanborn Road, Town Farm Road, goes up the hill almost opposite from the town shed, if you know where Town Farm Road is, and it goes all the way up the opposite side and comes out uphill from Puddleby's Kennel up on the hill, up that way. So that road goes all the way through, and there's different stands, and there are on that lot some different habitat concerns, specifically like there's an old heron rookery back there and some beaver flowages and things like that. And obviously some different management that turned out well and didn't turn out well that we can look at and talk about as time goes by. Things as a forester that I'm looking at, and if we're to be doing something out there, would be what would be the process for this committee to take that plan and say, how would we implement it? Obviously, there would be more walks out there to see that prescriptions would meet with town approval, and then to say, how do we go about getting the procedure to do this? So I guess we're looking at that as well right now, too. I don't know if we came by anything with that with the selectmen at the last meeting, or the thought really had to do with it. We really wanted to make sure that there was public input, wanted to make sure that we had public consensus, and then presumably long-term and most assuredly we could have town meeting again in June vote on an up or down for a harvest at a later date after June of next year, something like that. So we kind of have that on the horizon. I guess jurisdictionally speaking, Carlo, are there other things that we have? We don't tend to have more that are active subject matters than these pieces. But because we are a conservation commission, we do have other things that also, I mean, we come still in on the Mary Grant property.
We certainly could come in on the Mary Grant. We could also come in on the Goat Hill property, you know, which the town owns, and this.
By come in, I just mean procedurally speaking, have, you know, concepts and discussions about what we do on these pieces.
And go through the issue. I mean, one of the issues now with Goat Hill, now that there's a trail on it, somebody brought to my attention that dogs are allowed, or they are at this point, but, you know, obviously clean up after them, somebody had to clean up after a dog. If that becomes a problem, how do we deal with it? Some places, they actually go to the extent of what the friend of mine attends quite a few meetings with public access, and they say the most successful thing is you put out, poop bags, but you also have to put out a container for them to put them in. Because if you don't put that container in, then they don't necessarily take it with them. So anyway, if that becomes an issue up there, with the public access trail, there's going to be issues, and it's going to actually come back to this committee to make recommendations to the selectmen as to how. I'll give you a little update on that property. The town kicked in $100,000 towards the purchase of that, and Three Rivers Land Trust kicked in $75,000 to purchase that 25 acres. Are you familiar with Goat Hill, either of you?
Yeah, I know where it is, and I've pulled in there. I haven't walked it.
Oh, you haven't walked the trail, okay. So at this point, the trail, there was a grant from the Land and Water Conservation Fund, and the trail has the base coat down. The plan eventually is that will be an ADA compliant trail, which will probably, Three Rivers has kind of taken the lead on this, the land trust. The town becomes the sort of the agent, because with land and water conservation, you have to apply from the municipality. You can't be from a nonprofit group. But Three Rivers does the grant work. The town has supported everything on that so far. We just recently got an estimate to make it fully ADA compliant. It's going to require another $43,000 to do that. We've probably put close to that into it already, to where we are. LWCF, once again, will fund some of that money. What they do is a 50-50 match. So if they put up 50% of this 43, then we have to come up with a balance, the other 50%. So we're writing some grants to cover some of that, and some of it we'll do through private fundraising. So anyway, that is something that the committee is going to have to be responsible for in the long haul. Once it's all completed, and then any issues that come up there, we would be the ones that would make recommendations as a selectmen. It's going to be a heavily used trail, there's no question about it. It's already getting a lot of use, and there's picnic tables up at the top, so people can go up and have a picnic up there. There's views of the White Mountains, Square Pond, Wilson Lake. It's quite a view up there. So it's going to get used, and obviously when something gets used, there's going to be issues. So anyway, that's another thing that'll eventually will come onto our plate completely. It's being responsible. Steve has looked at the forestry aspect, and it's 25 acres. Some of it was cut hard. I think half of it was cut hard probably 25 years ago or something.
It's the remainder of a farm that really wasn't really accessible well, really rocky, pretty steep, not overly productive, and with the current high level use that the town is looking for at that piece, it doesn't really mesh well with commercial work as far as that goes.
So there will be more dealing with public access. Keep that going smoothly.
Yep.
So anyway, those are the three properties.
So yeah, I didn't come in with, formal old business other than let's look at what we have for moving the plan forward. Committee makeup, just introductions, that sort of thing. Secretary, anyone, or however that would work. And again, I'm looking at, the next meeting. We have, this meeting is consistently the third Tuesday at 7 o'clock is the idea. So I've now come back to need to, from new town policy, I do have to get back in touch with Jen every month, even though it is a standing meeting, because we now have, film meetings and this and that. They do want to know ahead of time, even if it's a standing order that the meeting is always at the same time. I need to tell her 10 days ahead, that way should there be any postings and that sort of thing that the public can attend should they want to. And again, so I need to really get on it on my end and bring things back more formally for my responsibility, because it's been off in my beginning tenure here, and hopefully get that back on track.
numbers are we supposed to be?
3 more than I need.
7?
7. Usually, you know, Wesley and Bill show up, and Mark fairly regular, isn't getting 3 members.
Yep, and a little bit of background on those guys. Wes has a really heavy water and soils background in the area and is a huge history buff in everything. So anything having to do with deed research, if you were to throw out, you know, an old family name here in town, he'll give you, you know, all the cemetery locations and the lineage of how that property came to be where it is. So obviously his interests overlap quite a lot. Is Bill actually like farming at this point? Like, meaning like...
I think his son more than he is.
So Gavin is mostly, yeah. So, you know, Bill lives up at the end of the Peck Road, up that way, and which is off of Milton Mills Road, turn right, go way up the hill. Wes is up off of Fox's Ridge, and you know, Mark Curry is in the area around Milton Mills range of the Waterhouse Daycare across the street. So, and he's obviously got a lumber background in his family as well. So we've all come at it a little bit different, you know, from different angles and such, and it's a pretty broad spectrum of people, and I think it's a pretty good composition for what the committee is designed to actually do. So I didn't come in tonight with any specific, particularly new business, other than to just make introductions, look at what we have for procedure. Again, trying to make this a little more professional on my part.
Do they have copies of the management plan?
No, again, those are available at the town. Jen has those electronically. This is my one draft copy for looking at here. I do need to take that back with me, but Jen does have everything available for public consumption electronically as well. And I've got an inventory that goes with that as well, within this, you know, massive folder.
So ask her for the forest management plan?
If you're looking specifically for the town farm property one, yeah, town farm road.
Do the other ones have anything?
I have a plan on that one, but I haven't made copies of it in, you know, 10 or 15 years. Because again, we haven't had active work on that piece in a long time. And I can reproduce that.
How about, is there any maps delineating?
Oh, within the plan.
It's in there?
Denise, what is your last name?
Voting, B-O-W-D-E-N.
B-O-W-D-E-N?
Yeah.
And Mike, yours?
Benjamin. Benjamin. B-E-N.
B-E-N. M-I-N? Can you pronounce that Benjamin?
Benjamin,
Like Benjamin, but Benjamin?
No,
Yeah.
I don't see those, but I
Yeah, that's right.
So it's B.
B.
B, I had B down here. B, Benjamin, okay.
Benjamin, like Benjamin.
That makes a lot more sense than
No,
that.
it's been a while, okay. Mike Benjamin, Denise Oden, okay. All right.
Okay, I have another question. You mentioned this committee being a conservation commission also.
Yep.
I come from Massachusetts, and I was on my city's town planning board, and working with the conservation commission, it was through the state, it was highly regulated.
Yep.
Is that the same here? Are there regulations?
No, I want to say no. I mean, I'm not familiar overly with what the responsibility is in Massachusetts, but what we had happen was a few years back, we basically merged the two committees. We had been the Town Forest Committee, which is why we've got, you know, more of the natural resource-based guys in this one. And then the Conservation Commission, at least historically speaking, had been doing things more like old cemetery maintenance and other projects like that. So the Conservation Commission kind of had their thing and we had ours, and we just happened to merge back together. But through ordinance or regulation, no, we don't have any.
It's just not like a wetlands type of thing?
No.
Okay.
No. No, basically, we're just a subset of the town body that's just putting forth recommendations and moving, research and process forward on different pieces. Yes.
Does the town actively look for additional parcels? Is that something there?
We had, for example, the last timber harvest that we had on the property on the Hebo, we had since passed an order. There was a question of whether it was a standing order or not. But for example, some of the proceeds from the timber harvest on the Hebo property back in the day had been put in front of the town body in June with an article on the warrant to have that money set aside for further conservation use. And part of that money here years later was what helped to buy the Goat Hill property that we're talking about. So we are looking at things like that, trying to have things stay in-house a little bit, and move that idea of conservation begets conservation forward.
Right.
And that's kind of an idea that we're working with. Obviously, it's not anything new, we're not reinventing the wheel, but the thought also was not to just necessarily have the town, for example, mining the town's timber in order to just put it back in the coffers and have it end up on a road surface or, whatever the project would be, to have it stay somewhat conservation based.
So there's no, they can do that, there's not
Well, again, that's where I think that we were having some questions, legally speaking, with when we made that warrant article in the day. Was that something that was a standing order or not? I don't recall where that came.
Yeah, I think it's not an account anymore, it's a line item, I think, in the town's books now. So it's still available, but it's not a...
So it could be used for other things. It's not a dedicated account.
I think...
It has been kept that way. It has not yet been used for other purposes, I guess is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
But obviously there's that concern, and there are those who would do that and take it toward other uses, and then there are those who think that it should be best kept with more natural resources, results. Again, that's a political discussion for the town body to determine, really. I have that idea and think that that's a great idea, and it begets more, land and more conservation, and as knowledge increases, and obviously as a forester, proper management begets good results, begets more land to do more work on. It's a great thing to shoot for, in my mind. But again, we are a part of the town body, so we do have to look at it like that too. So we do have to bring these things back to the town in June. And there are certain things that are always coming up thinking, well, is this it's always a recommendation from us to do these things, and then the question is, can we make decisions on this, or who makes decisions above us on this? Does it go to town meeting? Do selectmen make decisions with the information that we give them? And then have authority to make decisions? And that's always a political question to ask as well. So,
I worked for other towns where the forestry committee had all the games.
Exactly.
And all the money went back into it. That was realized through the summers. So rather than go back out and use taxes or buy a fire truck, whatever.
And I think within this committee, that's where we stand. I mean, I'm maybe speaking for others, but within this committee, that's a consensus that that's what we're shooting for. But we do look back on things after the fact and say, well, was that article that we put in front of the town perpetual? And that's more of a legal question sometimes. I mean, we had passed that motion years later, 4, 5, 6, 7 years later, the money was still there. We did use it for conservation use. But legally speaking, could someone have done that? And would we do it differently had we known that they could? So again, that's part of the committee to try to guide, I guess. So again, any questions that you have, I don't have anything else to be formal about here tonight, but.
I would offer to do the secretary's position, but I'd like to wait, a month or two, just to.
I don't want to pressure anyone into anything. Believe me, you can see how formal we are here.
Yeah.
It's not as though that it's, multi-hour or a month kind of scenario even, but just the same, I understand completely. Yeah. Like I said, my goal is just to try to be as professional as I can, and I found myself not being able to because we've had so much turnover. And then also my own familiarity is not all that great on this, so I'm really shooting now that we've got. I found I wasn't able to do all that much formally if we couldn't even come by a quorum to determine how to move forward.
Right.
So it's kind of like which comes first, the chicken or the egg in that instance. So if we're now back to being fully stocked, I'd love to just go back to the, the regs and say, here's how I'm supposed to do my job and here's how the committee works, and that way, when in this day and age of videoing of conferences and bringing forth of things to the town that are going to be seen by others, we want to make sure that we can't be, second guess procedurally that way. So it's nothing that is overly formal on our part. It's just making sure that we aren't, spitting in the wind either, So, but we appreciate the help. So thanks for the offer. Maybe somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
What does the secretary have to do?
Just a few notes at the meeting and then reproduce something to put forth. I'm trying to work with Jen, town administrator, just to say I have yet since taking this position. I mean, has she ever come back, Carl, and actually requested that we presumably should be submitting something back to her on a
should be
basis? I mean, I don't know that, again, I didn't know what was within your job description before or how frequently we resubmitted our minutes back.
When the secretary takes the minutes and then puts them up by email, Jen would be included in that.
Right, exactly. Okay, so that's kind of what I'm just shooting for is if, per se, a week from now, we got some minutes back and then I shot that off to Jen, then we would have something to be notifying her for the meeting then that would be 3 weeks later or 2 weeks later if it came in 2 weeks, and then obviously the, authorizing the previous minutes and Robert's rules and all that kind of jazz, so.
Well, I've served on committees, I'm sure you all have, that went from really, who's in charge kind of thing to formal, follow the agenda, so.
Well, again, when we've only had, 2 or 3 people showing up, we're kind of in this gray area of, can we move any policy forward? Not really, technically we can, but we don't want to just, cancel the meeting for the lack of a quorum either. So we might go out into the woods and do this, or gather information and disseminate information and just try to keep the ball rolling a little bit. So if this thing is to have some traction, obviously I'd like to be a little more formal about my job, certainly. And,
You both have emails?
yes, I've got theirs already.
You have them already?
Yep.
Okay. Can you get them to me?
I can, and I have to go back, and I do want to get back, I don't know how much Wes or Bill, or Mark for that matter, actually reply or read emails as far as that goes, but obviously the batch email in a circumstance like this is the best way to do it. So I would love to have that happen in that manner. So I'd love to be able to just go, okay, do we have a quorum for the meeting 2 weeks out? The weather looks bad, or it looks great, or how would this work, or do we need to postpone? We don't always have new business each month, obviously.
Right. So what I would like to do is get a copy of that from Jen and look that over and
Yep, like I said, I've given her a digital copy of that, so she should be able to shoot it out to anyone in 1 second and just look it all over. Yep, and again, last meeting was informal out in the woods, and presumably there will be other walks out there to go over the same sort of thing. Right.
And you go on your own?
And go on your own, yeah, take the plan and take a walk. Yeah, anything like that would be fun. Sure. And obviously any contact or information that you would need of me in between meetings or, you know, what you may see in the plan or out there, just give me a call, and, you know, needless to say, I've crawled all over it, so. But that's really what I've got tonight, so. Anything else for questions? Fire away. Nope.
Well, no, mine.
Yep. Can I get contact information from you two?
What's that?
Can I get your contact information as well?
Absolutely.
Would love to, yeah. That's all I've got. Does that make us,
Motion for adjournment.
That's it.
All righty then.
Okay, all right.